Good morning, America. Good afternoon, Europe, Africa, and good evening, Asia and Australasia. My name is Napapong Napang. I am ISRT Vice President for Asia and Australasia region, your host for today's program. We are very excited to have a special Facebook Live for the ISRT Facebook. Today, we have the close collaboration with the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, and the program Safety Culture Trade Talks. We have two speakers and four panelists for today. I'm very excited today to introduce to you our two speakers. First, Dr. Debbie Gelly. She's a radiation protection specialist from the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. And the second speaker is our own Stuart Whitley, the ISRT Director of Professional Practice from UK. And we have four panelists, radiographers from around the world. We have our president, Donna Newman, ISRT president from USA. And we have Dean Harper, president of the Irish Institute of Radiography and Radiation Therapy from Ireland. And the third panelist is Elizabeth Balogan. She is ISRT regional coordinator for professional practice for Africa. And Elizabeth is from Nigeria. And last but not least, my very good friend from the Philippines, Pishi Luna. Pishi is the International Council member for the Philippine Association of Radiologic Technologists. And to start today's program, I would like to have our president, Donna Newman, to have some words. Donna.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody around the world. I'm so excited today to launch this program with the IAEA and Debbie Gilly. To our members, the Radiation Safety Culture Trait Talks Handbook. We're excited to bring this forward to our members. We think this will be of value to you. We hope that we'll give you just a snippet of how you can use this book in your country. We encourage you to download this book and use it and incorporate it into your workshops, into your workplace, and incorporate it all around the world. So I thank Debbie for taking time to do this program with us, and I look forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you, Donna. And now it's your turn, Debbie Gelly from the IAEA.
So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm glad to be here. I'm very excited to launch the Safety Trait Handbook here and this audience and with this wonderful group of esteemed colleagues from around the world. This is a very important aspect of what we do in radiation protection, and I'm hopefully that this book will reach out and meet many people in improving radiation protection and patient safety around the world. And thank you again for the opportunity.
Thanks, Debbie. And now it's your turn to explain about 10 traits of this radiation safety culture in medical medicine training. And now it's your time, Debbie Gelly.
Hello, my name is Debbie Gilly. I'm a radiation protection specialist with the International Atomic Energy Agency. And today I want to talk a little bit about some of the activities going on at IAEA concerning safety culture. So in today's presentation, I'll talk a little bit about how the IAEA looks at safety culture and its importance and the activities that we do. We'll talk a little bit about what a safety traits is and some new course material, training material we have available now on the RPOP website and how you might be able to use this training material in your activities within your own organization. So a little bit about culture. Culture is about growth, something changing, dynamic. Growth can never be controlled entirely. Culture is created by people. It gives meaning to the world. Here's an example of culture. Culture helps us understand right and wrong, but what is considered right in one context might be wrong in another. Here's another example. Everyone suffers from some basic assumptions. We all bring some beliefs to the table where we work, in our work environment, in our family environments, in any organization we belong to. Your basic assumptions affect the decisions that you make, what you will focus on, what is important to you, how you approach others, and how you interpret culture. In this example of a cartoon, here's a gentleman asking about whether or not he read his paper on confirmation bias, and of course he's already biased. He says, but he proved that I already knew that activity. So you can see as this is an example of how we do bring those assumptions to the table with us. Culture is an iceberg. What we see above the iceberg is behaviors and artifacts. But what we see below the iceberg, which is about 9/10 of the iceberg, is our shared values, norms, shared basic assumptions. It's that area that underneath the water that is where we need to be working to change culture. And so our behaviors and artifacts reflect the culture we want in an organization and in a profession. So above the water level, you will see that we have visible aspects of culture. We have objects, actions, talk, text, and management systems. But under the surface is where we have our norms and values. Those are their basic assumptions about reality. Here's an example to give you to kind of explain to you how this plays out in the work environment. We have two managers. One has a belief that the people in the organization are lazy and do not want to work unless they must see a person looking out in the air. He assumes that anyone that's staring off and gazing away is a person who's daydreaming. This person asks to work from home. Many of us have had to work from home during the pandemic, and that request is denied because of the values this individual has about his employees. And so he probably thinks that they're just trying to get out of work altogether and actually not do the work that was involved, but do something else. But you may have another manager. A manager in this organization believes that people are competent and motivated to do a good job. He sees a person looking out into the air, and he probably is guessing, oh, he must have a difficult decision to make. He's trying to come up with some solutions to some challenging tasks, and he considers that he's working through or processing solutions. When this person asks to work from home from this manager, of course it's approved and requested, as the person probably wishes to be productive in the circumstances forced to him and her to have to be at home. How we look at culture is based on traits, and these are the activities that we see. And these can kind of be divided up, though there's an overlap along the way. And you'll see in some of the case studies that we have that we could really be talking about 2 or 3 different traits instead of just the single trait that we've focused on. Traits are a pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving. More difficult to teach and learn is how to change traits or how to improve traits or how to strengthen safety culture in those traits. This one requires a modification of one's own culture, the culture of the organization, and in some cases the culture of the profession that they choose to work in, and it's influenced by the culture of a subset of people. So you will see that not only that, it's your people, your peers within your own organization can influence this culture, and activities you do away from the work environment can actually influence this culture. Cultural shifts are more difficult. It's not like didactic learning. They happen over time, and the improvements may not be measurable for a period of time. So it does take some what we call storming, norming, and conforming in order to make changes in people's beliefs of these traits. The IAEA safety culture traits are listed here in the circle. We didn't prioritize any one over another, though I will tell you that I strongly believe that you've got to have good individual responsibility, good leadership, and good communication are key. The other ones are important. We don't want to discount any of them. To actually have a strong safety culture in radiation safety culture in medicine, we must have all these key elements in place. So let's talk about these. We'll go one by one with each one of these, and then at the conclusion of my presentation, I believe Stuart and some of the other members of the IRSST are going to go through the process of trying to do one of these traits in a facilitated discussion. So individual responsibility, key effort. all individuals take personal responsibility for safety. Responsibility and authority for safety are well defined and clearly understood. Reporting, relationships, positional authority, and team responsibilities emphasize the overriding importance of safety. An example of this might be if you were to see a spill on the floor. You do not walk around it. You take responsibility for that in a safety component, and you call somebody or you clean up the spill. In radiation safety culture, these would be things like when you see someone doing an examination not using the appropriate protocols for optimization of dose, you bring that to their attention in a kind and nice way, but we try to make sure that we are individually responsible for that. If you see something else that's happening that's inappropriate, you assume responsibility for that and correct it. Leaders are a key part of strengthening safety culture in medicine. If leaders are not interested in safety culture and there are difficulties with leaders wanting to make that commitment, then there will be always challenges on improving safety culture. In fact, if the next phase of this process on strengthening safety culture in medicine will be to develop a leadership course for people who work in radiation medicine. Leaders demonstrate a commitment to safety in their decisions and behaviors. Executive and senior managers are the leading advocates of radiation safety and demonstrate their commitment both in word and action. The radiation safety message is communicated frequently and consistently, occasionally as a standalone theme. Leaders throughout the organization set an example for safety. Corporate policies emphasize the overriding importance of radiation safety. Again, you can see this in the actions brought forth by the leaders. They make sure there's adequate staffing in place. They make sure that the lead aprons are there that protect the workers in radiology and diagnostic imaging capabilities. They make sure that the equipment is operating and the equipment has QA and QC performed on it. Those are the examples of how leadership can actually influence radiation safety culture. Questioning attitude. Another key important aspect on anything to do with safety, and especially in radiation medicine. Individuals avoid complacency and continuously challenge existing conditions and activities in order to identify discrepancies that might result in error or inappropriate action. All employees are watchful for assumptions, anomalies, values, conditions, or activities that can have an undesirable effect on facility safety. The standard phraseology is, we've always said it this way, why change now? When you have a questioning attitude, you might question why you continue to do these things if they are not the safest way of doing it. Maybe it's not the best way to optimize that examination. Maybe it's not a good way to do justification of exposures. So you should be looking at ways to improve the system, and you do that by questioning the current status of activities going on in your facility. Decision making. Decisions that support or affect safety are systematic, rigorous, and thorough. Operators are vested with the authority and understand the expectations. When faced with unexpected or uncertain conditions, to place the facility in a safe condition. Senior leaders support and reinforce conservative decisions. The best place I can tell you is when you're doing CT scan of children. That decision making is key in that particular area for radiographers and radiologists to make sure that it's justified, and also to make sure that you have the appropriate optimization going on for that particular examination. Again, we see this in many other ways through decision making, especially for leaders. If leaders are agreeable to support the having adequate staffing, that's the decision makings that a leader would make. We would see that in providing the appropriate resources needed to operate a radiography facility or a therapy facility. We would see that they would understand the value of having medical physicists do some of the QA and QC within an organization. Respectful work environment. Another very key important thing. Have you heard the term hostile work environment before, where people are intimidated and scared and bullied? Those are not an environment where we're going to thrive and strengthen safety culture. We actually need to have an environment where everyone's role is appreciated and everyone is part of the team. This is done through trust and respect. and it permeates the organization from the top down to the bottom up. A high level of trust is established in the organization, fostered in part through timely and accurate communication. Differing professional opinions are encouraged, discussed, and resolved in a timely manner. Employees are informed of the steps taken in response to concern. Again, this is where we have the courtesy of each person, regardless of where they are located in the organizational chart, and that their values are important. Continuous learning. Opportunities to learn about ways to ensure safety are sought out and implemented. Operating experience is highly valued, and the capacity to learn from experience is well developed. Training, self-assessment, and benchmarking are used to stimulate learning and improve performance. Safety is kept under constant scrutiny throughout a variety of monitoring techniques, some of which provide an independent, fresh look. Come to mind on continuous learning is we have the instant learning system for radiotherapy and radionuclide therapy, saffron, and we see all the time that a lack of a strong safety culture is a contributing factor to errors that happen in those particular modalities. And if someone were to have an incident learning system or was collecting that data on there, doing a retrospective study a lot of times will show improvements that they can make within the operating activities within an organization. In radiology, this is true too. I mean, we can look at the number of people that got the wrong image exam. If that is a problem, we should be looking at ways that we can prevent or reduce that, because it's unnecessary exposure of radiation to the individual if they came in to get a chest x-ray and they got their foot x-rayed instead. Work processes. This is the one we see probably one of the weaker ones that we have. We have to give the workers an environment where they can successfully do their job. And in order to do that, we must have policies and procedures in place. These should not be done in isolation. They should be done as a team approach. But this is the process of planning and controlling work activities is implemented so that safety is maintained. Without policies and procedures, individuals will take whatever value they bring to the organization, and that is how they will work. Work management is a deliberate process in which work is identified, selected, planned, scheduled, executed, closed, and critiqued. These policies and procedures in place on how we do the work we do are not a one-time opportunity. They should be continuously reviewed, and if there are issues within using that policy and procedure, they should be changed and corrected and continue to be critiqued. It needs to have the full organization to be involved in this. You should not be getting processes and policies from only the radiologist or the medical physicist. They should be done in a team approach because we want you to be able to do the process. We want you to be able to follow that procedure. Last one is effective safety communication. Again, it's not last on the list because it's of less importance. It's just how it works around the ring here. But we really need to make sure our communication is very good in the organization we work in. We really strongly encourage the team approach. We really encourage you to have these facilitated discussions with radiologists, medical physicists, your nursing staff, your front desk staff, as well as radiographers or radiation therapists. It should be done in a much more open discussion because many times they don't understand the challenges you have. So please try to hold these little safety facilitated discussions with a large group of a diverse group within your organization. Safety communication is broad and includes facility-level communication, job-related communication, worker-level communication, equipment labeling, operating experience, and documentation. Leaders can use formal and informal communication to convey the importance of safety. The flow of information up the organization is seen as being just as important as the flow of information down the organization. A lot of cases, a lot of places I go, I see where they have a suggestion box in the staff lounge area. And the staff can put suggestions in there on how to improve something within the organization. Those are great ways to start the process, but it is important that there is a discussion among staff and of all multidisciplinary team, and that there be some feedback to the staff. If you have a suggestion box and you put information in the suggestion box and no one ever reports back, you will stop putting information into the suggestion box. So this is our training material. It can be found on the RPOP website. It is Radiation Safety Culture Trait Talks Handbook. It's a study manual that offers practical recommendations for medical professionals to strengthen patterns of good behavior and attitudes that contribute to a safe environment. Training material has a set of objectives at the very beginning of it. It has an introduction of each of the traits, and within the introduction of the traits, it has case studies, and they're based on examples of safety culture challenges in radiography, nuclear medicine, radiotherapy, and worker protection. And then it has a series of questions for the purposes of facilitated discussion. The questions are divided into questions about the actual case study, and then the next set of questions are questions that you would address on how you could strengthen that particular trait in your organization based on the review of this particular case study. Why did we choose facilitated discussion? Well, because it has the best opportunity to have a positive influence on group-based behavior changes. It improves communication across, down, and up the organization. Facilitators do need to be experienced at being a facilitator for facilitated discussions, and if they are, they're able to keep a positive focus on the discussion. We do not want this to be a complaint session. We want this to be looking for opportunities for improvement. And then the facilitator must be able to gather the key points from the discussion and put them into actionable items at the conclusion of the study. So why is culture so powerful? We are human beings. We act upon basic assumptions. We are social human beings. We conform to our surroundings. We imitate and listen to the people we respect. We think are respected and listened to by others. We influence each other through storytelling and norming. And almost all of this happens unconsciously. We do it every day in the activities we do, in engagement at work as well as engagement at home or engagement with our families or with our friends. But it is one of the more influential things in improving radiation protection in medical facilities. I throw this in here as just a list of publications where we talk about safety culture in the IAEA. As you can see, there are lots of safety culture guidance. A lot of this is in nuclear power, where we've had potentially significant more deaths from accidents than other areas, but we're working on trying to build up these general requirements and tech docs in the area of radiation safety culture in medicine. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I have enjoyed working with Stuart on putting this project together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie Gilly, for explaining the 10 traits to us, and we will get back to you during the Q&A session. I look at the screen from our Facebook Live, and I'm so happy today that we see a lot of new faces coming to join the program, especially from Africa. And in Asia, we have new faces from Mongolia. That's very exciting, isn't it? So the next talk will be presented by Stuart Whitley, the ISRT Director of Professional Practice, and Stuart will talk about introduction of the individual responsibility trait. Please welcome Stuart Whitley.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or evening, dear colleagues from around the world. Thank you for joining us for this special webinar as we promote the launch of the IEA's Radiation Safety Culture Traits Talks Handbook. Debbie has given us a great insight into this important initiative, which ISRT has contributed to and will be actively involved in its promotion and rollout, inclusive of all imaging modalities using ionizing radiation and radiotherapy departments. We have a lot to learn and to share together. Today, we will be sharing a role-play exercise based around trait 1, which is the individual responsibility trait. This will demonstrate how the Safety Culture Traits Handbook will operate and be employed at the operational level. So, just imagine that you're watching a group from the same organisation sitting around a table, and please participate in this exercise and experience as to how you might respond to the scenario described. I want to thank our volunteers who are participating in our role play today. Thanks to Donna Newman, our president, Dean Harbour from Ireland, Elizabeth Balgon from Nigeria, and Peachy Luna from the Philippines. After the role play recording, we will play a short video digital presentation attached to the handbook, which was put together by Ronathia Karafika, a therapeutic radiographer from Greece, and which reinforces the aspects of individual responsibility trait. It is good to say that the video presentation linked to the effective safety communication trait was also complied by a great radiographer, Anastasia Saragolia from Greece. Both, in fact, won first place in their respective traits competition. So let's get started. What I'm sharing now are aspects of individual responsibility taken from the handbook. This states that personal accountability reflects the belief that both leaders and employees are individually responsible for their performance and the roles that they play in radiation protection. So, why is this important? Personal accountability means taking radiation protection values seriously and taking responsibility for upholding radiation protection standards. In organisations with positive safety culture, individuals have a strong sense of accountability for the safe operation of the facility, their own safety, and for the safety of their co-workers and the public. In the medical setting, this includes accountability at all levels for the safety of the patients and their family members. So our next slide describes 3 important components, which are high standards, job ownership, and teamwork. Now, in terms of high standards, individuals understand that the importance of adherence to radiation protection standards. In terms of job ownership, we as individuals understand and demonstrate personal responsibility for the behaviour and work practices that support radiation protection. And lastly, for teamwork, individuals and work groups communicate and coordinate their activities and within and across organisational boundaries. And I think this is very important that we remember it must happen across organisational boundaries. And our role play exercise will demonstrate that. At this point, I would ask the participants in the role play exercise, had we been in a room together, to read the case study and the questions in the handbook. And then after a short time, we would gather together to go through their answers. But as this has been done previously, therefore we don't need to have to wait until they deliberate. Now, for those watching on Facebook and have not seen the link in the Traits Handbook, the next slide is a summary of the situation. A patient is scheduled with a medical history from 2 hospitals for an emergency interventional radiology procedure. In this case, it's in the cath lab. The radiological medical practitioner unfortunately did not read the dose history of the patient. The patient had a 16-minute successful procedure with a 4 gray Kerma dose. Now, the medical practitioner did not take note of the dose or record it. However, the medical radiation technologist recorded the dose in the surgical log, but unfortunately he did not report it to anyone, as he assumed that the radiological practitioner would follow up with the patient regarding the dose. Now, 2 weeks later, the patient was suffering from an itch and a red rash. He showed that to his relatives, and they advised them to see a medical practitioner. And he did that, and the medical practitioner suggested that they contact the hospital where the examination was performed and speak to the radiation medical practitioner. So the patient calls, but is told to wait 10 days for a scheduled appointment with no review of the patient's dose taken at that time. Then at the appointment, the situation is much worse, and the radiation medical practitioner is surprised at the skin injury for 4 gray. So an in-depth review indicates that over 4 prior procedures at 2 different hospitals within a 3-month period, the actual cumulative dose was approximately 12 gray. Now, the patient is seen by an oncologist and recovers. So today we're going to investigate what are the lessons learned and the multiple opportunities to prevent this from happening. So just a quick summary. There were multiple opportunities to identify potential side effects of the multiple procedures, but no one in the chain, from the medical radiation practitioner at the 2 prior hospitals to the current medical radiation practitioner to the technologist, took upon themselves to make a thorough review of the record as a whole, or to make a point of ensuring that the next person in the chain understood the full history of the patient. Now, while the procedures were all necessary, the use of fluoroscopy found to be appropriate and the patient ultimately recovered, it could have been spared pain, discomfort and fear if he had advance notice as to what to expect. And the situation would have been far worse had the dose been higher. So thank you for your kind attention. And we will now move into our record of our role play exercise. So I'll hand back now for this to be shown. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Stuart, for explaining the individual responsibility for this program. And now I will give the program back to you to run the discussion of the trait by the participants.
We are going to ask some questions of our volunteers who have kindly volunteered for this afternoon's session, dealing with trait number 1 on the newly published IEA handbook on traits. And so we have shared a scenario already, and I'm sure that you've all had the opportunity to look at that. So you will see and hear some of the answers that are being fed back by our colleagues, and this is really an opportunity for us all to be thinking about the questions and also to be able to understand the situation that we would find in our own departments. So I'm going to ask the first question. List the actions and behaviours that have reinforced safety culture as a priority on this case. So I will start with Donna. Donna, can you just...
Thank you very much, Stuart. You know, as I read through this scenario and looked at the team approach on this, I saw some things that would affect the safety culture and contributed to the mishaps that happened in this scenario. So I have a whole list, but I'm not going to list all of them because I think that each of us will have something to share with this. So I think one of the things that happened in this scenario was that there was a lack of effective communication. And so that contributed to the mishaps that had happened. And I think that although a person may have perceived they had personal accountability as they were doing their job performance, they actually did not follow through on their personal responsibility. So I will stop with those two traits and move to my other colleagues to have them have an opportunity to see what else they thought were lists of actions and behavior that actually were priorities in this case.
Thank you, Donna. Dean, can I go to you, please?
Yeah, thanks, Stuart, and thanks, Donna. It's very interesting to hear your take on it as well. I found the document and the scenario. I tried to, I suppose, when I had a look at it, I was trying to frame it within the attributes outlined within, you know, the document and the IAEA's safety harmonization, the harmonization of safety culture. So when you think about adherence to, you know, professional standards and high standards within the department itself, and this idea of teamwork and collaboration and ownership, I suppose, it really looked to me within this example that a lot of these things were lacking. So there didn't seem to be effective teamwork there. So as Don has alluded to in regards to communication, there doesn't seem to be any standards in terms of policies, procedures, guidelines, and people knowing their roles and responsibilities within the area. And then there didn't seem to be any ownership from a professional point of view on what you needed to do as an individual to ensure the safety of the patient and a safe and effective procedure in terms of getting that right information, making sure that you have everything to hand before you go ahead. And then even after that, from a learning point of view, making sure that you follow that accordingly. So I suppose that's the way I decided to look at it in terms of behaviours. I framed it really around those attributes. So,
well, thanks, Dean. Peachy, what's your take on it?
Well, the scenario number one is a very interesting scenario, but I just hope that this situation is not happening in the facilities. For actions and behaviors, I think there were lapses in the accountability. I think each and every members of the team in all levels must have a shared accountability when thinking about safety. Personally, too, I think that there should be consistency in demonstrating safety as a priority, and that each of the members of the team must have or must always work so that the workforce is safe and the workplace is also safe. So that's my take on that first scenario.
Thank you, Peachy. Elizabeth, what would you have to say?
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. The scenario came as if it's impossible, but sometimes it could happen. And I'm so glad we're discussing this, not just for discussion's sake, but to better our practice as professionals and do the best. I will look at the fact that there were no shared responsibility. It was as if everybody just wanted to stay within their comfort zone and then move on, like just, okay, we've achieved this task. And as professionals, we're not just dealing with robots, we're dealing with human beings who's got feelings as well. So we have this practice in the department. Sometimes it may take a little bit more of you, where when you finish with the patient, you also want to find out, okay, when is your next appointment? And sometimes at that point, you're able to actually get feedback from the patient. And sometimes at that point, the patient is able to express their fears. I hope I don't have any pain after the procedure I just passed through. So I would say that if there was a bit, not just waiting for the general feedback where we just distribute forms in the department, once you finish with the patient, if there's this communication with the patient as well, okay, I'm done with you, you can go and come back for your appointment. The patient may be a bit relaxed and ask you a few questions, and there you may be able to also remember that, okay, or the patient may just ask a question, I hope I'll be fine after this procedure, and you may just be able to allay the fear of that patient and eventually remember that there's been a missing link, and you could be able to admit the mistakes to yourself and probably be able to correct it before the patient finds out by him or herself.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think one of the things that comes across at this particular juncture is the lack of shared responsibility. Moving on to the question 2 and 3 that follows, let's just sort of look at shared responsibility. What does that shared responsibility mean in this context? Because I'm sure it's indicative of similar situations that we might find right across all of the modalities, including radiotherapy. Donna, have you got something to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Stuart. So with the shared responsibility, it plays right into the safety culture traits and the behaviors that happen in this. So if you have an effective safety culture and you have everything in place, in this scenario, the opportunities to actually have a shared responsibility would have been, as radiographers in our daily job, we know that we always look for previous exams. We always know that we look if there's a duplicate exam. That's part of our daily work. So we need to know that part of our shared responsibility as personal accountability be to make sure that we got the dose that was received from the other test, so that was available for the physician to look at. So I think that we have to have a culture we're able to, if it's not there, to be able to maybe stop the line, to raise the question, the dose is missing from the previous procedures, can we proceed? And then also when the patient called in with symptoms and they were talking about having a rash, the shared responsibility would be effective communication, where we would say that we need to look back at the chart, we need to effectively communicate and go through the next steps. So that is like the shared responsibility and personal accountability that each of us on the team for radiation safety for our patients are taking personal accountability to make sure that we do all of the steps in the procedure and the protocol in our daily practice. And this would actually have maybe helped, it may not have prevented the dose the patient got, it may or may not have, but what it would have done was would help the patient not have to endure maybe some of the side effects from it, because they would have been treating the patient's symptoms right away as they were going and working with the patients right away from the beginning when they had the rash. So I think on all levels as radiographers, radiologists, we all have those responsibilities to pay attention to the detail and effectively communicate and share that responsibility. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Donna. Dean, have you anything to add to that?
Just to say, Stuart, that exactly reiterating what Donna said, at the end of the day, patient safety is everyone's responsibility within the organization, and that feeds into the shared responsibility. It's not comes down to one single person in an organization. When you reflect on that example, you may think that there's almost hierarchical systems at play. In other words, they feel that it ultimately is, down to the medic at the end of the day to ensure that, but every person on that team had a chance to, step forward and say, this isn't right, we haven't got all the information to hand to make a safe and effective decision. So that really comes into this idea of, patient safety culture and embedding that within an organization. And as it really needs to come from the top down. So making sure that the correct structures and governance are in place that really support that type of behavior, and really reinforcing that, you know, there is no blame, come forward, what's everyone's role in this, what's everyone's responsibility. And, you know, everyone, as I say, has a role to play, you know, from the bottom up. And if everyone plays that part in a team, it's just going to be a safer and more effective care for the patient at the end of the day.
Thanks, Dean. I think that sort of nicely goes on to the third question. And Peachy, could you take that up? How does this look like? And can you sort of give some examples as to how it should look like in any department, this shared responsibility? What would drive it? What would make it happen?
To me, I think if each member of the team will have that sense of owning or ownership of their own roles to perform, if they are always mindful that each of them is part of the team, then and each of them has a part or role to share in completing one task, they will also be reminded that in the chain, if one would fail in performing expected role or responsibility, that could affect the entire activity or examination that they are required to do. And so to me, shared responsibility is a very good reminder that when you become part of the team, you should always be a proactive also, that you must learn how to endeavor and focus on solving a problem. And yeah, I think also that each member should be encouraged to have a sense of accountability. And if each member will have that sense of accountability, then they would be able to complete one task successfully.
Thanks, Peachy. That's good. Elizabeth, would you like to conclude this section by adding to what Peachy has said?
Yes. What I'll just add to it is the fact that the patient is the king, and we are all there to serve the patient, not our individual egos and our individual thoughts or whatever. But not also forgetting that sometimes these things happen where if somebody who is supposed to take this role is probably not taking it at that point, if you remember that, okay, there's still a missing link before we go ahead with this patient, there's nothing stopping you from making an observation in a nice way, because eventually, if it turns out bad, it's going to affect the whole team, not just the person that has failed at that point. And fortunately for us in the radiation family, we're more or less like Siamese twins. You know, it's not as if there's no clear cut that, okay, you finish your job here, this job. We work hand in hand to make sure that the patient gets the best diagnosis of therapy. So you should all own up to it and speak up as soon as we notice that somebody is probably not doing what is right, but in a nice manner and in a way that it will help attend to the patient and make our work good and keep the safety culture that we all want to achieve.
Well, thanks, Elizabeth. I think we'll skip ideas as to how that situation could be prevented. I think we've more or less summarized that, but Donna, would you just like to sort of comment on that, and then we'll move across to the trait questions?
I think that the importance of ensuring that these are prevented is by ensuring that you always use the team approach and the radiation safety to the patients. And that includes who is on that team. That team includes management, that team includes the radiologist, that team includes the radiographer, the physicist, and it also includes any nursing staff or any ancillary staff you have in your department, because you all play a role in the complete overall program. So we go bottom up or top down, and we all have to be vested in the overall radiation safety and safety of the program for occupational and for the patient and for the public. So I think that what we need to do is ensure that we always have a team approach where we're doing this. And within that team approach include shared responsibility and personal accountability.
That's good. Thank you, Donna. I'm going to move on to the individual trait questions. Now, the first one is quite challenging in some ways. Does my practice group department have overall individual responsibility? Now, today we're looking at a number of departments right across the world, so rather than one particular one, but in this scenario for the future we will be looking at an individual department. But so let's just pretend we're all working for the same department. Okay. Dean, would you like to kick off on this one? And sometimes we've got to be honest in our replies. Thanks, Dean.
Thanks, Stuart. Well, from my own perspective, I'd have to say that within our own organisation, we do have a strong safety culture and individual responsibility within that. And I think that's supported, as I say, by strong leadership, strong governance structures, where really the patient and patient safety is at the forefront of everything that we do. So that comes all the way down the chain, and we've got dedicated committees that look after patient safety and quality. We've got strong policies, procedures, guidelines that outline the standards that individuals have to play, outline the roles and responsibilities as the team within that. And then to back that up even further, we, as I say, operate a no blame culture. It's a just culture. So we very much encourage when something incorrect happens, that it's reported up the structure, that it's investigated accordingly, and then it's acted upon. But we really see that as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to improve our safety. So we have, in my opinion, a very strong safety culture within our own organisation, and that's taken many years for us to get that way, and it's supported by strong regulatory frameworks in that regard as well. So I feel we're very fortunate to the position that we are in, but we're constantly learning and strengthening that, and now we're moving towards audit programs to ensure that the standards that we have written down are obviously backed up and they're carried out on a daily basis.
Well, thanks, Dean. Elizabeth, would you like to add to what Dean has just said?
Yes, the regulations are there. The organizational structures and safety cultures are also there. But I want to advocate that it goes beyond just the papers and into our minds and our actions. Because once in a while, a member of the team may just forget or may just not play right. I've seen a situation where you have like this scenario we've just explained here. And so where those individual roles are being played and we still see that somebody is not fitting to the role as appropriately, especially sometimes you have the new engaged professionals who are just learning, and sometimes they're just learning and getting into the organizational structures. Sometimes you have new management, sometimes you have new people coming in, and you need to educate them over and over again until they get those things in their hearts and minds, and they get it to their unconscious mind where they are unconsciously competent and just doing the right thing.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Peachy, would you like to add to that, please?
So we have standards that are in place, and there are also policies that are available. Personally, I think that policies need also to be strictly reinforced. There should be, there can be a separate body that will be checking whether all the content of the policies and standards are being implemented. And we are very much thankful that materials like these, resolutions, regulations, are also available and easily accessed by the Philippines. And so we try to adhere with these standards and try to improve our practices so that we can coherently practice the safe standards as provided to us by different international agencies. So I think in our place here, there are policies that are available and standards that are tried to be met.
That's good. But I think it's important that in addition to having the standards that are there, that people own those standards and actually apply them and not just do lip service to those things. Which takes us on to question 2. If yes, list the actions, ideas to improve individual responsibility within your practice group or department. So how would we encourage colleagues, and we've touched on the new person, so how would the new person adopt the safety culture of your department? Donna, you kick us off.
I think that's a really good question. And I know that in my nuclear medicine department, we have colleagues that I work with that have really high standards, but we work with liquid radiation. And so you know that there are mishaps that happen, just human error happens. And so I think that the way that we can do it, myself as a leader, I can lead by example and ensure that I have a safety culture, but yet try to find opportunities to, in my yearly education and my meetings with my staff, to help them understand what personal responsibility looks like and what they are responsible for, but yet create an environment that allows them to bring forward an accident if it happens or a near miss, so that we can learn from it and maybe refine our policy, refine our protocol to see if there's something that needs to be redone just based on the situation that happened. Do we need to use a different product? Do we need to actually add an extra safety measure to ensure that it doesn't happen again? Because we all know in our everyday jobs that we do have near misses and we do have things that happen where we just have human error. And so I myself find that as I'm reading this and learning from this personal accountability, I'm thinking from a leadership standpoint, and then also I'm on the floor as a radiographer thinking about my own personal responsibility. Maybe I have to incorporate more education on the topic of personal responsibility so we all are vested. Education always makes you more vested.
Oh, thank you, Donna. Dean, could you add to that? What would you do if you had a new member of staff?
So kind of echoing what Donna said, leadership is really important. We need to mentor new staff that come in to the ways that they, to give them these behaviors that they need to display. And it's also about reminding them about their professional responsibility. I know it's not the case everywhere in the world. Within the Irish system, radiographers are a regulated profession and we have to abide by a code of conduct and practice and ethics. And it's really to have that at the back of your mind at all times. So whilst within a department you have to follow procedures, guidelines, etc., you also have a professional obligation, and there's usually very specific things in terms of accountability and ownership outlined in codes of conduct. But it's also a big part of it for me is empowering, particularly the younger colleagues. So getting them involved with change. I often feel that with change, people can be quite reluctant to change or nervous. But actually, if they're part of change, if you involve them in the process, people are more likely to own it, take ownership of the outcome of that, and to actually go ahead and champion that as well. So Elizabeth touched on another important point there. It's about winning hearts and minds. It's about quality improvement. It's really building that into the culture of your organization so that, okay, mistakes happen, as Donna said. They happen all the time, unfortunately. But you know what? We're going to learn from this. We're going to implement some changes, and we're going to bring you along on this journey with us, to win the hearts and minds, see what's in it for them, and not just ultimately the patient at the end of the day, who is, our key focus.
That's great. Thank you, Dean. And I think that nicely moves us on to question 3, and that is list potential barriers to improve the individual responsibility in your practice group department. Peachy, could you take this one up and let me know what your thoughts of this are?
So I have listed several barriers that will improve individual responsibility. So one of which is lack of trust to their leaders, or leaders failed to show enough credibility. I would agree with Dean when he said that the leaders must take the lead in demonstrating as model, and they must be the first in line in demonstrating safety as the top priority in their facility or in their organization. Another would be poor communication. I also believe too that with just information, there is no communication. There must be assurance that communication is open, good, and also effective. And another barrier would be, yes, I would agree also with my colleague, lack of compassion and mindfulness, being thoughtful about the values of performing safety at all times. So that will be my answer.
It's a very interesting one. Lack of compassion. I really like that. Elizabeth, would you like to add to what Peachy has just said, please? That's good. I like those barriers.
Yes. For me, those barriers are first human barriers, especially for younger professionals just coming on board. Sometimes the healthcare ethics requires us to actually have a mentor-mentee relationships, and sometimes if that does not exist, you find out that there's a new set who just stay in their own world, and you, the older set, you stay in your own world, and you're not able to pass down that safety culture in a way that it should be and be easier for them, rather than for them to learn from past mistakes and be able to improve on that. They are left to make their own mistakes, which I think is a huge barrier. Another barrier for us, especially in this part of the world, is usually equipment and accessories. Sometimes it's not just that you don't know what to do, but if you don't have those accessories, those equipment to do those things right, they may just inhibit you, and you may have to make do with just what you have, even when you know what is right and what to do. And another barrier could also be management policies and decisions. You know, sometimes there's this thing in management, they tell you the management engages you and tells you, we tell you what to do. Fine, you have your professional ethics, code of conduct, and all that. But if they say, okay, we're limiting you to this place, but you know within yourself, you can do better for your patients, and that's not good enough for your patients. But what I've encouraged people over the years is that you keep advising, because most of the people in management, most times, they don't know what your profession entails. So you could educate them when you are educated yourself. So sometimes training and retraining could also be a barrier if people don't submit themselves to learn and relearn and relearn all the time.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for that. Now that takes us on to our last question, and we'll soon be completing our session. And the last question is select and share one or two ideas that you would like work on to improve the individual responsibility when you go back to your practice at department or group. So I think each one of us in turn, please, to answer this one. And Donna, we'll start with you. Donna.
Thank you, Stuart. I appreciate that. As I read this whole scenario and I was looking at what I learned from it, having been a seasoned tech in the field for 30 years and a leader, it actually really said to me, I need to not forget that we need to lead by example. So I brought back out of this whole scenario that, during our monthly department meetings, we need to talk about safety culture and the attributes, and openly talk about them so that people learn what they are, feel comfortable with them, use your own examples, so people feel like it is a safety culture environment. And so I brought back that, this should become a part of our monthly meetings for the learning aspect and for the effective communication and allowing people to feel like they can openly communicate.
That's great, Donna. Thank you. And I'll jump to Peachy this time.
Yes, thank you, Sir Stewart. So I plan to make use of this material as we go on with our online virtual training of our interns. I find the examples very reflective, and I would like to make use of these scenarios to give critical thinking challenges over our students. We also, I plan also to make use of this material in presenting in our next webinar, in our next online conference that we will have for this year. Thank you, Mr.
Well, thank you, Peachy. Elizabeth, what would you like to say?
Yes, I really want to thank the IAEA and the ISRT for this beautiful submission and handbook. It's been worth the while. And what it has just brought back to me is the some management series where we talk about management by objectives. For every team I find myself, I'll prefer we come together as a team before we get the patient coming. Once in a while, put down what our responsibilities are. Sometimes it helps. You know, don't wait for the end of the year and they say, what do you hope to achieve? What do you discuss with your manager? Let's really discuss it. Okay, this year, this is what I need to achieve. Maybe 1 or 2 lines, and I just pin it up behind my desk, behind the control room, and it can guide me. And I will also put it at the back of my mind that in this canoe of safety culture, I'm not a passenger, but I'm a paddler. And you know what that means? If I leave my paddle, then we all sink. I wouldn't want us to sink in this journey, so I'll be a paddler. I will encourage every other radiographer around me to be a paddler. Hold on to their paddle, and we all paddle the canoe to safety.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And Dean, how would you like to sum this up for us as we come to the end of our session?
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, I again echo what Donna says. As a manager within a department myself, we have safety and incident reporting as a standing item on our agenda to go through the incidents from the previous month. But actually, what I really found beneficial from this whole exercise and the handbook is taking a different look at it. And actually, this forum even has been very useful in terms of actually, let's take some of the scenarios that have happened and break them down as a scenario itself and sit down as a group and really break it down and see what happened, what could have been done better, and use that as a way to drive quality improvements within the department. So it's kind of more of a focus on the incidents that happen themselves, but as a group, and get the staff involved. And again, this idea of empowerment and everybody's involved and accountability. So I think that might be really useful.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, team, for what this afternoon has been a very intuitive session together. This is the first for us, and I think this is going to be one of many webinars, and we are at the vanguard of spreading this handbook and the traits to our colleagues. And I like the idea that we feed this information right out into our countries and into individuals to raise the profile. And it's absolutely fantastic to understand already that most departments' standards are actually very high, and that this is something which, you know, is comforting, something which we all can own. So thank you ever so much for contributing today. I really appreciate your help and involvement, and we look forward to meeting up sometime soon. Thank you ever so much.
I announced Jude, you will move on to introduce the video record from the IAEA.
Thank you, Napapong. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's been a fabulous day so far. But just before we go on to the question time, if you had the handbook in front of you, you would see on the page that you can actually click on an icon and go into the digital presentation, which accompanies the handbook. So we're going to do that in a second, but I would just like to comment that this particular video, digital presentation, was put together by, excuse me if I don't pronounce it properly, but Rhonda Karavanki from Greece, a radiographer who won first prize in this trade. So it's wonderful that radiographers are involved right at the heart of the IEA. So thank you. So I'll hand over to Yvonne, who will play this for us. Thank you.
International Atomic Energy Agency indicates 10 cornerstones for a strong safety culture in workplace. As one of the basic traits, personal accountability has also major contribution to safety empowering in nuclear medicine. Radiation protection values need the belief that you are fully responsible for your own actions and consequences. Like a choice, a mindset, and an expression of integrity. But lack of accountability is like a contagious virus that infects progress. Supposing low accountability was an epidemic in a facility and a chain of inaction behaviors extended from person to person. Then how could somebody take personal accountability for an immediate resolution? After all, anybody could be infected and probably nobody would be accountable at the end. If you are part of a team's incident or misunderstanding, your inaction or irresponsibility likely contributed. Besides, patient's protection relies on all individuals' personal responsibility involved in a teamwork. Anytime you experience poor results, the sequence of events almost always reveals insufficient problem ownership. Often halfway to the solution are those who request feedback and acknowledge their part in problem. Effective communication needed. Let's see 5 simple steps to keep up, become more accountable, and support core values. Step 1. Admit your mistakes. Do not blame others. Focus on making things right. Self-acceptance is key to moving on. Step 2. Look at your reflection. Request feedback and acknowledge your part in problem. Learn from your mistakes and make opportunities. Step 3. Engineer solution. Collaborate with other participants to find what can change for better results. Step 4. Support your own role. Know your responsibilities. Leadership has a primary role in reinforcing accountability for motivated employees. Step 5. Be honest. Do not hesitate to ask for help. Have the courage to apologize if something is wrong and you are responsible. Personal accountability flourishes team trust, future prospects, and completes a solid safety culture. Be thoughtfully accountable for the best. It is worth it.
What a wonderful program that we have today. It's very productive. And thank you so much for our 2 speakers, Debbie Gilly from the IAEA and our own Stuart Whitley, and also our 4 panelists, Donna Newman, Dean Harper, Elizabeth Bolovin, and Peach Luna. Here comes the session for the question and answer. I got a couple questions from the audience today, and for the audience, if you still have any question, you can post on our comment box so that I can ask our speakers and the panelists for today's program. First one is from Ontario, our Vice President for the America. The question is, does your organization have and use a reporting and learning process to ensure that errors are reported? I think this is a quite specific question and maybe different answer from each person. Maybe I go for our panelists first. Let's start with Don Newman.
Thank you, Napa.
You want me to repeat the
I appreciate-
question?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you for asking the question. And we do in my hospital, speaking as a panelist in my area of the world, we do have a safety reporting mechanism when there's a near miss or when there's an error that happens that we fill out as a person working in our hospital. And then we do have a team that gets together to review the steps, find out if there are things that could be changed, find out if a policy needs to be changed. So we do have a safety reporting mechanism. Thank you.
You're muted. Napapan, unmute.
Yeah, I know. No, sorry. Thanks, Debbie. I'm on vacation now, actually, just to let you know, and I'm on a different computer. Let's get back to Dean. You have any comments on this? The question was, does your organization have and use the reporting and learning process to ensure that errors are reported?
Thanks, Napapong. Yeah, very similar to Donna. We have a reporting structure that's in place now for a number of years, and we've actually gone even further in the last 5 to 6 years in that it's become electronic. So rather than use paper, it's very accessible to anybody through a link on the intranet. And very similar, we break our incidents down to errors, near misses, concessions, or non-conformances. And staff know they're guided with clear policies and guidelines on how to rate each of these. They're reported up to the line managers, and then we sit on kind of fortnightly meetings. We review all the incidents, we rate them, and then we look at opportunities to learn from that, which is then shared out amongst the rest of the staff. So quite similar to Donna's.
All right, thanks. And now I'll move to Elizabeth Balogan. What about your department?
Thank you, Napamong, and hello world. In my department organization, we have a reporting channel for such near misses and all that. It's still paperwork though, and you're supposed to report and write it down after you notice something has gone wrong. And then the senior officer, your supervisor, goes over it and call others who may be involved to rectify it in the nearest region. Yeah, that's what we have in my organization for now.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Now it's your turn, Peachy. Any comments on this?
Yeah, so thank you, Napapong. I work in an educational institution, and if you happens to have a medical machine for that emits radiation, you still have to seek a license from the CDRRH or under the DOH-FDA. And that means too that this government agency requires that there is a radiation safety officer. What I think is critical is that we may have non-uniform protocols with regards to reporting of radiation accidents, but I think we have existing for each case. If there happens to be one radiation safety and quality assurance QC officer, there is a protocol that is being observed.
All right, thank you, Peachy. And I think next question would go to our speakers, Debbie and Stuart. The question is from Mr. Kim Martin, the president of Myanmar Society. The question is, most of the radiology departments have safety local rules and code of practice. Shall we recognize these as radiation safety culture? Debbie.
Having rules doesn't necessarily mean that behavior is what we would like for it to be. You use policies and procedures to set a foundation and an expectation of how employees will perform. But ultimately, culture is something that is within a person. And it is that behavior we wish to change. We do have instances in saffron, in radiotherapy, and in nuclear medicine events that we're now collecting that indicates the policies and procedures were in place, but the individual did not follow them, and therefore a significant error occurred. So yes, you need that. We do require that. We call that trait work processes. It is key and important that those work processes be put in place, and they should be developed as a team, a multidisciplinary team. But having them just in place doesn't necessarily indicate that there is a good radiation safety culture.
Thanks, Debbie. And I think we have a lot more to discuss, and I'm sure that we can come up with the next program in the near future about this, because we have a lot of things to learn. Even for me, I work in radiation protection for like 20 years. I still have to learn a lot. And come back to Stuart, what's your opinion on this?
I agree with Debbie. We've been on this journey for a number of years now, talking about safety culture, and obviously we think we've got a safety culture, but we don't really know we've got a safety culture until we try and measure it and see how effective we actually are. And I like what Elizabeth was talking about, mindfulness and issues about lack of compassion. And I think, it's a behavior aspect, and it's a gut thing that we purposefully, when we go to work and set our food in our departments, we want to make sure the patient is safe. And so everybody should be empowered to actually to do that in one shape or form and act as a team. But what we need, those underlying documents, those standing operating procedures, they're all important. But it's good that we're embarked on this trait. I love it. Thanks.
Well, we really have good time today and a very, very good program. And I'm sure that we will come back to our audience. Actually, we are a very big family of radiographers and technologists across the world. And I'm sure that such a program is very, very important to us. So to conclude the program for tonight or today's program, I would like to hear somewhat from Debbie Gilley from the IAEA, and we have to thank you a lot for the IAEA to initiate this program with us.
Well, thank you so much, Nepapan, and thank you so much for the other colleagues that participated in this exercise. This is meant to be given in person. You will value the facilitated discussion that we attempted to do today with Stuart's leadership. This is what we would like to see in a face-to-face environment. Communication is such a key role in this, and many times we can use these activities, such as discussing each trait, as a way to actually communicate better within our own organization. Professionalism is another thing that is just so key in improving safety culture. And in fact, we reached out to professional organizations to test this methodology and go through the processes of the traits. And Stuart was one of our colleagues that participated last February when one of the last meetings, face-to-face meetings we had before the pandemic. And I just applaud your professional organization for the work they're doing and taking on responsibility for strengthening radiation safety culture. And I am very proud to hear that there is significant professionalism going on for radiographers throughout the world. I always worry that, maybe we pay more attention to the physicians or the medical physicists when you are actually the one that are providing the service to the patients. So I do appreciate all that you've done today. I hope it's been a fun experience. This is supposed to be a fun activity. It's supposed to be an engaging activity, and it was designed for a baseline to start to look at improvements. And with that, I will thank you again for you supporting this activity.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And I would like to conclude the program by our president, Donna Newman. Donna. Donna, please unmute your microphone.
First, I'd like to thank Debbie Gilley for taking the time to help put together this program and present it to our members from around the world. I think it's important for us to be leaders and to bring forward to all our members this resource that you can use within your countries to help educate and train people on what safety culture is all about. I also want to touch on a question that a person had in the chat box. I want you to know that the ISRT has many resources, safety culture and radiation safety. Please go to our website. Our e-learning has specific education on digital radiography. We have guidelines on QC and CT, digital and mammography, and soon in nuclear medicine. We also have position statements that help direct you in your country where you should be going, and know that all these webinars are housed on the website where you can go back and listen to them. And this will be pinned on our Facebook Live for the next 2 weeks so that if you didn't have time to watch the whole thing right now, you can watch it in its entirety. But use our ISRT website for all resources to get education that you need. And thank you all our members, our panelists that took time. Your expertise from around the world is the only reason that we have success in our organization. So thank you for being experts in this field and participating for our members. I have to always thank Udapon, that you're amazing with your technology and how you're able to put this all together for us. And Stuart for running this panelist and coming up with this wonderful idea. And Napa, thank you for always hosting this. You're so dynamic for our members. So thank you, everybody. You have a great day, night, evening, and we look forward to the next webinar that we put on.
Thanks, Donna, and for all the colleagues around the world. See you next time. Goodbye.